What's up, guys? Steven from Techmaker.tv here. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to build a fully featured chat room application with Ruby on Rails 6 with Action Cable. This isn't going to be your typical chat room app. This is going to be really quite in-depth. It's going to keep track of which user is posting what. I'm going to show you how to manage different connections. So if you jump into a different room, it'll work the way you expect a chat room to work. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty cool episode. I hope that you're ready for it. So it's going to take us a little bit. It's probably going to be a couple hours long. I'm going to go ahead and suggest that if you're not familiar with Action Cable at all, check down in the links because in the description, because yesterday I created a video. It's about 20 minutes long. It shows you sort of the ins and outs of Action Cable. I'm kind of learning it myself, so I just kind of did an exploratory session. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check that out. Also check down there if you're interested in any of the other more in-depth series that we're doing. Right now we're building out a link shortener with Rails 6, and I've got another series that's happening right now on building out a stock market tracker with React.js. So if that kind of thing sounds cool to you, definitely subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see more long-form content like this, leave a comment below and let me know. It's a little more time consuming for me to do. That's why I typically break it up. But I'm here to make stuff that you want, so just let me know in the comments what you prefer. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to try to fly through this a little bit. So first of all, let's just check the version we're running here. So for future reference, this is Rails 6.0.2.2. So let's kick it off with a new app. So I'm going to just call this chat room, Rails new chat room. Just accept all the defaults, keep it simple. Okay, so now that that's installed, let's just change down into chat room and open up the code. Alright, so let's go ahead and just close some stuff, move some stuff around on my screen here a little bit. Alright, so yesterday I put out a video about exploring Action Cable, and I'm not going to repeat all of that here. So if you're curious about why we're doing some of the things that we're doing, you can go check that out. But just remember that you will need to install Redis if you don't already have it. So I'm going to open up my gem file. And if you don't have Redis installed on your computer, you'll need to do more than just put it in your gem file. Just a heads up. So check out the video if you're confused. But we can bundle install after adding Redis to our gem file. And then I'm also going to open up the cable.yml file, change this from async to Redis. This is just a little bit of setup that we'll need to take care of. Okay, and then I'm going to copy this URL and put it here. Okay, and save that, and we should be good to go as far as all of that is concerned. I'll leave a link to that video down in the description so it's easy to find if you want to check it out and get a little bit more background on all of that setup and probably some of the other things we're going to do as well. I'll try to cover mostly what's happening, but there may be some details that we kind of gloss over. So we do have to do a fair bit of non-Action Cable, non-WebSocket setup here because we're building this out from scratch, and I'm going to do that hopefully as quick and painless as possible because I know if you're watching this video, it's because you want to learn how to do the Action Cable real-time chat kind of stuff. So I'm going to try to do this really quickly, and to that effect, we'll probably won't write the cleanest code in history. We're going to leave a lot of scaffolding laying around because we don't really care about that right now. So let's go ahead and just do that. So I've got the idea for essentially three models. We're going to just have a chat room concept where a user can create rooms, join rooms, so on and so forth, which means there's a user model and probably a chat room model, and then there's going to be a message that kind of sits in the middle and has a many-to-many relationship. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say Rails G scaffold, and then we'll call it just room, and it's going to have a name, and we'll leave it at that for now. And let's see, what else are we going to need? We're going to need to have a user. And I'm not going to make a scaffold for user. I'm going to automatically create users. To keep it simple, you're just going to get assigned a username when you hit the web page with a session. So we're just going to create a model for user and give it a username. And then we'll add a validation that the username has to be unique over here. So we'll just do that really quick. So validates uniqueness of username. Okay, and then finally, let's create a thing called a message Rails G. Let's give it a scaffold. Rails G scaffold message, and it's going to have content text, and it's going to say user references and what do we call it? Room references. Okay, and let's migrate this stuff. And hopefully we did that properly. Okay, cool. Nothing exploded. So far, so good. Okay, so let's open up our routes. And you can see here we have a couple of resources already from the scaffolding. And I'm going to just say root, and we're going to say rooms index for now. Okay, so let's run our server over here, and let's open up our browser. It should be right there. Okay, and let's hit localhost 3000 and see where we are in the world. Okay, so we've got the ability to create rooms here. And you can see that basically we just have our standard scaffolding material going on. Okay, so I want to grab the Bootstrap latest CDN link over here. And we're going to use that for our styling here. So let's go ahead and just open up application.html.erb and paste this thing in right here. If this was a real project, I would not bring this in with a CDN, but I'm trying to just keep this simple. And so refreshing, we see that our style changes, so we know Bootstrap is in place. It looks like everything is working right. I'm also not worrying about any of the JavaScript. All I really care about is the CSS. So let's go ahead and start building out the front end for this a little bit. Okay, so what I am envisioning is something where, let's open up our rooms index. So I'm kind of envisioning something that looks a little bit like Slack, maybe not exactly. I'm not going to spend that much time on the front end here, but something where you have a list of rooms on the left, and then when you click on one, you're into that room, and then you're kind of chatting on the right. So let's think about how we could do that. So with Bootstrap, and I'm not here to teach Bootstrap or anything like that, so and this may not be the best execution of it anyway, but I'm going to do something where I have like container fluid, and then I'm going to make a row, and then let's say that we have a column, let's say like 3. I'm not going to even worry about the size of the browser. I'm just going to say it's a 3 column, 9 column, column 9. Then what I want to do is say for each of my rooms, well, first of all, at the top, let's just put a card body, and right here we could put the form for a new room, right? So we could say render what is that, form, just form like that, and then we could just say room is room.new. See what this looks like. Okay, so we have our room form there. Okay, I don't need that in a card. I don't know why I'm doing that. It looks kind of silly. just put that like with an HR tag under it or something. Yeah, that's more like it. Okay, then let's open up that form because that looks like crap. So rooms form, let's say class is form control, and then down here we'll say class is btn primary, btn block. What did I do? Does not like to have the class right there probably. Okay, fine. Let's just say add room. Okay, so not the most beautiful thing in history, but we don't really care, right? Because we're trying to run through this and it's not supposed to be beautiful. I say that, I do care a little bit, but I'm probably going to just come back at the end and clean up the look of it a little bit if we want to. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, we shall see. So anyway, what I want to do is under this HR tag, I want to actually print out my list of rooms, and we're going to make it so that if we click on one, we actually don't really want to leave this page. I just want to like sort of load the actual room on the right side. So let's start by just printing out the list of rooms and linking to them. So what we'll do is we'll just say at rooms dot each do room. And what I'm thinking is maybe we will do like, how should I do this? I could make it a card. Yeah, let's make it a card because we'll probably stick some stuff in there in a minute. This is sort of my go-to element if you can't tell. So when all else fails, use a card. So what I want to do actually is link to this thing. So we do need to print it out. So we'll say link to, and what I'm going to do is say, how can I do this? Maybe just like room path. Well, no, I want to say rooms path. But then I want to say room ID is, let's see. Let's just do room path. And what we're going to do is just change the, I don't know, I can't make up my mind about that. Let's come back to that thought in just a second. So we need to do link to whatever the path is, do, and then in here we'll just say room.name for now. And let's refresh this thing. No route matches. I can do just room. Okay, so now we have room 1 here. When I hover it, does this weird business. Click it, it goes there. Okay, so that's doing something. Okay, so what do we want to do now? Let's open up our rooms controller. And what I want to do is actually in show here, I'm going to say at room equals, well, we actually have that already. It's the default scaffolding. So down here, so we're already setting the room. Fine. What I want to actually add is this at rooms equals room.all, and then I'm going to render index. So now it's going to look like nothing is happening here. So if I click this, it's just going to actually just go nowhere on the front end. But if you look at the URL, we're actually at rooms/1, which means that we actually have an at room. So what we can do is over here, and again we're going to be kind of changing this up as we go, but we can say if at room.present, let's just print out the name of the room in a p tag for now. So at room.name, and let's save that. If we refresh, we can see there, and then if we go back to just slash, well, if we just go back to our home page, there's nothing, right? So it's like we're kind of missing a logo or something up here to click on to go back to the root path. Okay, anyway, so we don't need any of this stuff down here anymore at all, so let's just axe that, refresh, and let's try to add a room and see what happens. So add room, and we're getting this notice up here, which I don't really want because we can tell that it was created by the fact that we just got redirected there. So let's add room, room 3. So now we're in the room we just created. We can jump between all the rooms, so that's cool. I don't like how these things are right up against each other, so let's say card and then MB2, which is margin bottom. Give it a little space. Alright, so let's talk about what we want to do next. Basically what I want to happen is on the right side here, I want to turn this into kind of a chat box like you would have on Slack or even on your phone and text messages. So at the bottom of the screen, we're going to have an area where you can type and a button, or you don't even have to probably have the button, you can just hit enter. At the top, we're going to have kind of like a nav bar looking thing that tells you which room you're in, so on and so forth. And how do we want to go about doing that? First of all, let's just inspect this. I'm going to pop this out. Move it over here. And so how tall is this thing? So what's at the top? So we have what is creating this padding. I guess that's probably coming from what is doing that? So we clearly have a margin. Maybe that's coming from the scaffolding. Let's look inside of assets over here, style sheets. So margin 33 pixels. I'm going to delete this scaffolding stuff because that's going to interfere with other things, and we've got some empty CSS files here. You know what, I'm not even going to worry about cleaning it up. I just don't want the scaffolding to mess with my stuff. So if we push that out, now we're going to break our nice little layout we had going on there, and we actually kind of fix our links so that they're not turning white when we hover. So okay, so the scaffolding was giving us some stuff that we weren't paying attention to, so now we're going to have to clean this up a little bit, but that's okay. I want that to go from top to bottom over here. So now what I want to do is say if room.present, I'm going to create a new div, and let's call it, let's just call it chat room. Sorry if you've been getting a bit of a scratchy noise. My mic was hung up on my shirt, so I fixed that, hopefully. One of these days I will enter into the future and get some Bluetooth headphones or something. Okay, so let's keep going with this. So what do we want to do here? So I need to create, in my JavaScript folder over here, I'm going to create a new file called application. No, I'm going to create a new folder called style sheets, and then I'm going to create a new file in here, application.scss, and in here I need to import style sheets application.scss. And then back in here, I should be able to do like chat room. Let's just make sure that we're actually hooked up. And I need to open up application.html and make sure that I change this to style sheets pack tag. So let's see what that does. Not a dang thing. All right, where do we go wrong? Okay, I'm just going to click inside of here, chat room. I have chat room, background color. Well, it is getting my styles, but it has a height of nothing apparently. So let's do height, not hack, height 100 VH, which is view height, so it should be just the height of the browser. Because we took away all that padding, that should be exactly okay. Cool. So, oh, I didn't put anything in the chat room. I left it outside of it, which makes more sense all of a sudden. Okay, so now we've just got that black box, which is not useful, but still it's there. So what do we want to do now? Okay, so I don't want the background color, obviously. I want to make this where the overflow Y is hidden, because we don't want this to scroll. I want everything to scroll within. And okay, so now we're kind of back to where we were. Okay, so in the next couple of minutes, this will hopefully start to come together a little bit more. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a new div down here, and I'm going to call it chat box. Maybe that sounds reasonable. And then what I want to do in here is render the form from the messages scaffold. So we haven't even looked at that, but there is an entire other area over here called messages that scaffolding generated for us, and honestly we're just going to ignore that. But we need to render this form for a new message, and it's going to be a message.new, and this may break. No, yeah, so what we've got going on with the message situation is it's trying to manually take a user and a room because it references those things, and it's basically saying, hey, I need a user ID and I need a room ID, and that's because of how we set up the relationships when we ran the migrations, or the scaffolding kind of stuff rather. And we obviously don't want to have to enter in my user ID is this and the room is this. So what we're going to need to do before we really proceed is fix that. So let's open up the messages form, and we don't want any of this except for the user ID there. And we really don't want, we don't even want anything with the user ID. What we do want though is a hidden field for the room ID, and that we will provide, let's say room ID, hidden field. I think we just say room.id like that, and then what we'll need to do is pass the room along from the render over here. Right, so let's refresh and let's see what that does, if it explodes or not. Undefined method merge. I think this format, I need to say value like that. Okay, cool. So now we just have a content box with a button. If we try to run something in here, it's going to blow up and tell us, hey, undefined variable room for, okay, so it's redirecting us back there. That's kind of weird. Let's see what happened in the database. So I want to see if it created a message. No, it did not create a message. So I think what happened, and let's check in the thing here. So if we just follow the flow, so we have a rollback transaction here, which is what I was expecting to happen, and then it just tried to render basically a new form or something in the messages, but because we don't have the variable blah 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 blah, it didn't work because we don't have a user is basically what happened. So trying not to get too hung up in the details. Normally I'm doing much longer series, and I'm trying to cram a bunch of stuff into one single episode here. So let's just kind of cut to the chase. If you want to get a lot more detail, let's look at some of my longer series where they're like a gajillion parts, and I kind of don't spare any details for the most part. Okay, so let's look at what's going on here. Alright, so let's have a quick look at the message object also, message model. So you can see here we have this belongs to user and belongs to room. And now whenever you specify these things, Active Record essentially won't let you create anything unless you have them. So they're required by default essentially. So what we need to do is say at message.user equals current user. And so this is sort of implying that we actually have a current user, which we don't. So let's open up our application controller. So what we're going to do here is say current user, and what we want to do is basically say, if we have a session ID, user ID in the session, we're going to just use that user. Otherwise, we're going to create a new one. So essentially, whenever somebody lands on our page, if you've never been here before or you don't have an active session, we're just going to create a user for you. This is obviously not how you would want to do this in real life, but it's fine for what we're doing because it's just an example. So what I'm going to do is say if session, and we may change this up a bit in a second, not sure. If session user ID dot present, I will say at current user equals user dot find session user ID, else, and we need to actually say current user equals user dot generate. Okay, and then we'll say session user ID equals at current user dot ID, and then up here, and then I'm just going to kind of put a guard statement, and I'm going to say return at current user if at current user dot present. And the reason we're going to do that is because we don't want to run through this query every time we call the current user method. Okay, so what do we need in here? We need this user.generate business. So let's go to user, and then I'm going to create a class method called generate. So we'll say def self.generate. And I'm going to just do something kind of like, so we have to have a unique username. So let's actually do something where we have like, so I think I'm going to do something where we say like adjectives equals ancient, got to think about this, broken, creative, dangerous, really I hope I don't misspell any words right here, effective, flying, and gilded. I don't know how to spell gilded. I guess that's right. Okay, and I don't really like broken. That's kind of sucky to give somebody as a username. And then we'll say nouns equals, let's start what's after G, highway, intern, really having to get creative here, jackhammer, and maybe like lion and master. Okay, and then what we want to do is get a random number, probably like 3 characters. So we can do something like rand.2s2.4, I think. So let's look at IRB for a second. Just a quick explainer on that. So if we just type rand, we get this long decimal. So if we convert that to a string, we get that, and a string can be accessed with array or square bracket type stuff. So if we get, you know, each thing position by position, we can get to the different stuff. So this is actually just selecting this segment basically. So we're getting, you know, it's pretty quick and easy. So now let's look at what we've got here. So I want to say username equals a string. So I'm going to say adjectives dot sample dash nouns dot sample dash number, and then I want to say So that's highly likely to be unique, I would think, at least for our purposes it is. In reality, we would want to have a ton more adjectives and nouns to get more interesting stuff going, but all I'm going to do now is just say create username, username, username. Okay, so let's see here. If I so I have current user in our application controller. I'm going to write helper method current user, which is going to make that available everywhere, even in the views, I think is how that works. So what I'm going to do now in my index page for rooms is just at the very, very beginning, we're just going to say hello current user dot username, and let's see what happens here if I refresh. Undefined method for one integer. What in the world happened there? Application controller. Maybe I need to. Okay, so it probably would work on a refresh. Flying Highway 503. Okay, I can live with that. Alright, so to be sure that this is doing what we expect, let's open up a new incognito window and go to localhost 3000. Now I'm effective lion. One more time for fun. Effective lion 716. Did that change? No, it's like probably have another incognito window open somewhere and it's like keeping this session. So we'll check on that momentarily, but it seems like it's working. Okay, so now let's go back and try to create a message here. So first of all, I need to go in my room and say has many messages. All right, and so then what we want to do is just inside of our chat room here, directly inside, for now, I'm going to say at room.messages.each do message. Okay, and we'll just make a p tag and say message.content, right? And then in our messages controller, when we create a message, I don't want to do any of this stuff. I just want to redirect to request.refer, referrer, and let's see what happens here. Undefined method referrer for, did I misspell that? Maybe that's referrer with 2 R's. So let's go back here, go to room 1, room 2. Okay, so my message did get created in room 2. Let's see if I spelled refer correctly this time. Unknown format, respond to do format. I really don't care about the format. I don't care about any of this stuff. That's probably a bad idea. I just want to back up. Okay. In actual fact, I just want a message.save and then redirect. Cool. Can deal with what goes wrong later. Okay, that's what I was expecting. So I did warn you at the beginning of this video that we would be writing some sort of maybe shoddy code or less clean code than normal, and that is a fact because we're moving really quick through this. So let's work on how we actually present this. So right at this moment, we have the ability to create messages and display them. It looks like junk, and we're going to fix that momentarily. Let's actually do one thing really quick. So we have message.content, and then I'm just going to say message.user.username right beside it. So it's telling us Flying Highway 503 said that. If we go back to our incognito with effective lion over here, if we click on room 2, we can enter in. So now we actually have a chat happening, right? It's just not streaming anything. So we have two things left that we want to do here. We have a full chat room app running, but we need to be able to essentially have these live update, and I want to fix the styling first because it looks terrible. Okay, so let's go to our, first of all, let's take our chat box here and let's fix that. So where do I need to go to do all this? So I have a bunch of crap open. I'm going to close it all and open it back up. Rooms index is what I need, and then I need application.scss. Okay, so down here I have chat room and I have chat box nested inside it. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say position fixed. Let's do absolute, and bottom 0, and let's see what this does. Nothing. Oh, there it goes. I just had a delay. Okay, cool. Got worried for a second. So now what I want to do is go into my messages form, and I'm going to fix this a bit. So first of all, I'm going to add class form inline there. Then down here, I'm going to take away the label because I don't care. I'm going to make this a text field content and class form control. And I think I need to make this a form group. I may have to go reference the Bootstrap docs here in a minute. I'm going to bump this up above. And then this, I'm going to just say so what do we want to say? Add message, and then we'll say class btn primary. Okay, so I've got now a input down here, and I've got my message box, so I can just type and click add message, and now you can see that that's added right there. I've got to quit typing the same stuff over and over and over again. Okay, cool. All right, so what I want to do now is just make this thing, let's put some padding on it, not left, all, so we'll make it 15 pixels, and then let's say input type equals text. I'm going to make the height on this 45 pixels, and the font size, let's call it 18 pixels, and padding, I don't know, 10 pixels. That might be too much. Say 8 pixels. I have no idea. Let's refresh the page and see what it looks like. Okay, so now I've got a bigger box there, and it's got some room from the bottom. I'm going to make that 20 because I want it to kind of be a little bit higher up on the page. And I want this thing to go all the way across. I need to also make my button the same height. Height 45 pixels. Gonna have to deal with padding and whatnot too. It looks okay. Cool. I'm gonna add on this guy, I'm gonna do a margin right of 2. Okay. And then how can I get the width on this thing to go all the way across? That would be nice. Form group. What's the width of the form? Can I just do like width 100% and get it going all the way across? No. I need to go investigate the Bootstrap docs for just a second. I think I have an answer. It might not be like the best answer, but I'm just going to go ahead and do this really quick. So instead of form group, I'm going to call this input group. And if we look, nothing changes. If I change my chat box to have a width of 100%, see what that does. So now you can see that's going all the way across, and it's actually causing an overflow in the X direction, which I don't like. So I'm just going to do a quick calculation here. 100% minus 15 pixels, which should account for the difference there and bring us back on screen. So let's look. That looks to be about right everywhere. So the last thing I want to do is add some placeholder text here. So let's just say placeholder, type your message here. Okay, and let's see what we got. Okay, cool. So now this looks pretty good. So one other thing we can do that I just looked up, I'm going to get rid of this MR2 here, and this may fix our width problem. So if we do div input group append, let's see what that looks like. So those are now joined at the hip. I think the width is fine. I don't like that outline. Probably take that away later. I'm going to worry about more styling with that after a while. Next thing I want to do is make these messages look better, because right now they look like just text printed out because that's what they are. So what I'm going to do here is say div class equals message, and then in here let's say message, let's just say content maybe. Let's print out the message content. And then under that, let's say div class equals author maybe, and then we'll copy this thing so not to retype everything on here again. Okay, so now let's say what I'd like to do is say something like I want to add another class of me if message.user equals current user. Okay, so let's refresh this and let's see. So I'm flying highway 503, so let me inspect that. So got content me, and actually I'm going to put that up in the message class. Okay, cool. So let's axe this from here and put it there. Okay, so let's go over to our application CSS and chat box. Actually, this is not in the chat box, this is in the chat room. So we're going to say dot message. I'm going to say background color E. That's actually going to be the content. And we're going to, let's say, padding 10 pixels, border radius 15 pixels. See what this looks like. Okay, that should not be 100% width. How can we fix that? So what we want to do is set this as display inline block so that the content, what did I just do? There we go, save that. So now the content should only be as wide as the content inside of it, basically. Okay. But we obviously don't want that to happen like that. So what we're going to do is, let's see, maybe we should put a break tag after each one. See what this does. Okay, so now it's wrapping in the way that we would want. I'm actually going to make this have an MB3. so that we get some spacing on these things. Okay, so let's add a longer message like, hi, this is a much longer message to see what happens. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I don't like the padding exactly as it is with these things. I'm gonna bring the padding down to 8 and bump that up to 20, and let's see where we are. That looks better. And actually, I'm going to say padding 8 and then 16. Let's see if I have that order right. I may not. I sometimes get that backwards. Okay, that looks cool. Now what? So what we want to do is underneath, we still haven't addressed the, what is it called? I don't need this open right now. The author. So dot author. What I want to do is say, let's make this font much smaller. So font size, let's just say 12 pixels or 0.78 rem maybe. Color, let's make it gray. And let's make it, let's bump it to the left just a little bit. Or to the right rather. See what that looks like. Okay, so what I want to do now is, first of all, that looks a little bit big. What I'm going to do is make this where if I'm the one who set it, it's going to float over to the right and have a blue background with white text. So very much like if you're chatting on iOS or something like that. In order to do that, I need to make a couple of, I don't want to copy, I want to inspect. I need to make a couple of changes here. So how tall is that? 59 pixels, is that right? So if I say here to my message, if I say min height, and I say 59 pixels, what does that do? Nothing. If I say 60, does it go up? Yeah, so I want to leave it at 59, okay. So in my application SCSS, I'm going to say min height 59 pixels. Okay, and what I'm actually going to do, I think I'm missing a div basically. So I'm going to say div class equals content container. And I'm going to bump these things up into it. Let's refresh and see what we've got so far. Okay, so nothing's happening really. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap these guys in a content container so that I can move them around together. Okay, did not want to go all the way down there. Okay, then what I'm going to do is bump this display inline block into the content container. Okay, that didn't work as expected. Why did that do that? Let's investigate. So we've got our, maybe it's because I have a BR tag hanging out somewhere that I don't need it anymore. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, yeah, so now we're back to where we were. So what I want to try is just, what happens if I float this guy right now? Hopefully they just all stay stacked up exactly like this and move to the right. Okay, perfect. So I don't want to float all of them. What I want to do is, if you've got the class on the message of ampersand, or of me, so I can do ampersand.me dot content container float right. So let's see what that does. Hopefully I got that syntax right. Okay, so now we can see here that we've got everything that I said over here, and then effective line is here. So that's exactly what we were hoping for. So now what I'm going to do is say dot content background color What color is the primary color in here? What is that? That's what I want. This is going to be very blue and white. And color white. And let's see what we got. Cool, so now we've got something nice looking happening here. Okay, so the last bit of styling that I want to worry about for the moment, we're going to do some more later, but the very last thing I want to do is fix this room 2 label up here. So I'm going to look up the Bootstrap Navbar really quick, and I'm just going to grab, I don't want anything fancy at all. I just want like this, and we'll put that in right here where we have that room.name. I'm going to just replace this, and I don't actually want that to be a link or anything. Maybe I can make it a span. And let's get rid of the P tag there, and let's see what this looks like. Okay, so now we can see here that that is, we're going to have to worry about like scrolling and stuff at some point. So in actual fact, this probably needs to be a Navbar Fixed. Is that how that works? Now let me do a quick search here. Fixed top is what I needed to say. Okay, so now we have another issue because it broke out of the container. So you know what, for now, let me just take that away. We'll worry about that later. I don't want to cause any additional problems. For now, I'm just going to give this an MB4 so that it kicks stuff down a little bit. And now that looks better. It's not going to work quite right. So once we have like this really hooked up, I'm going to have to come in and figure out how to make this like kind of sticky here and then have stuff scroll under it. But we're also going to have to deal with the issue of we want this to scroll all the way to the bottom when the page loads, because you imagine there's like a long conversation here. You want it to load at the bottom, and when people chat, you want the screen to move up. So we'll have to worry about that little bit of animation at the end. The other thing I'm going to do here is just grab this little bit of text there. And how can I do this? So what I want to do is say something like ULLI class equals nav item, and paste that in there. See what that looks like. Not at all what I was imagining. Let me do a quick search in here for nav item. Navbar nav. I need to put that there. Okay. Let's refresh. Okay, so that's fine. So we're logged in as Flying Highway 503. Okay, everything looks pretty good from this point. Like I said, I'm going to come back at the end and tighten this up even more because I decided to make this as nice looking as possible, I guess. So, but let's move on. Let's get this working like a chat room now. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and jump back over to our terminal. So now I need to create a new channel. So I'm going to run a command in Rails G channel, and I'm going to call it room, I think. Let's just call it room. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to generate a few things. And again, we looked at this in detail yesterday in this example over here. So we're going to use some of that material. If you want to see that done in depth, you can look at that video. But let's go ahead and get going. Okay, so over here in our file tree, we can see we have this channels folder, room channel now. And what we're going to do is the same thing we were doing yesterday. So we were looking at something like this. So room channel and then underscore, and then we have a params object, and we're going to say params room ID. Alright, so once we have that, we need to go down to our room channel JavaScript and fix a few things in here. So instead of just having room channel, what we're going to have to do is say channel and then come over here. So we're basically going to pass in an object with params instead of just directly saying room channel. And then what we want to do is say room ID. And we're on room 2 over in our browser right now, so let's just hard code 2. So now that we have that inside of here, let's just console.log connected. And then let's open up our console here and refresh the page. I also restarted my server off camera. My computer actually just freaking crashed on me, so that was weird. So anyway, you can see here that we're connecting to the WebSocket and room channel is transmitting. Okay, so let's hook up something to handle receiving data. So let's just actually console.log when we receive data. Let's just console.log the data, actually. And let's think about how we want to do this. So back in our messages controller, which we haven't done much with really, here we have, when we create a message, we're redirecting to request.refer. Why don't we just get rid of that entirely? And let's just say, what is it? It's action cable dot server dot broadcast, and we want to be on the room channel. And remember, we want the ID for the room, so we're going to say at message dot room ID, and then let's just pass in a message really quick. So let's just say message hello. We're going to need quotes around that for that to do anything. And then back in our room channel JS, we're just console logging the data. I don't need any of this open. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen here. Where's my terminal? Okay, so I want to see that, and then I want to see the actual developer tools. So let's just see what happens here. So if I type in a message and I submit, what happens? Nothing happened. So it broadcasted to room channel 2, message hello. Am I connected to room channel 2? Is that what it is? Room channel, room ID is 2, so I should be connected on there. I didn't receive any data though. Okay, so it looked like I actually just didn't save the room channel.rb file. So now I saved that, and now let's check out what's happening here. So I'm going to refresh. It says I'm connected, and when we type anything in there, we get our message hello printed out. And that's just because, remember, we hard-coded that right here to say message hello. So let's actually hook this up to send over some HTML that we can append to the page. So what I want to do, instead of passing in a message here, just a little hello, I want to send in some HTML. So what I'm going to do is say HTML equals render partial, and then I want to look at, what is it? It's messages message. which doesn't exist yet, so we're going to have to make that. And then the locals is going to have to be at message. And actually that's got to be a hash, so we'll say message like that. And I'm actually going to go ahead and split this on a multiple line so it's a little bit easier to read. And then we'll say HTML is HTML. Okay, so now we need to actually create that. So we need to create a partial in here. New file, message.html.erb. Then what I'm going to do is come over here to my messages thing here, and I'm going to cut all of this. I'm going to paste it inside of message. So now what I can do is just say render messages message for my main view actually, and then we'll just say message is message, and let's refresh and see where we are. Okay, so we broke everything. I guess I've got a bad habit of not saving things today. Okay, so now we're back. Alright, so we are still console logging out the data here. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. So if I just type in some stuff here, hit enter, it's redirecting, but you saw it flash. If you didn't, you can rewind and pause a little bit. It flashed out our HTML there. Let's actually open up our incognito window again and go to channel 2. So I'm now Dangerous Master 912, which sounds a little crazy, but whatever. Let's open up, so keep our console open there, and just type in something there. And you can see that, oh, I'm not on that channel anymore. Let me refresh on this channel. Let me go back. I've got to fix that little redirect thing there, but let's go ahead and just see if we can get something to print out. Okay. So you can see here that we're printing out the HTML that we want. And what we need to do now is fix this because this is broken. This needs to scroll, basically. Okay, so back in the code, let's open up application.scss down here. So we have overflow y hidden. Let's make that scroll. Let's refresh. Now we should be able to scroll all the way down. Clearly we have some layout problems here, but I'm not going to worry about that too much for now. Let's just go to room 1 and talk over there because there's more space. What that means is we're going to need to set our ID to 1 right here until we get ready to not have this hard-coded. Okay. So first and foremost, this is redirecting because we're calling render right here, and we don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a new background job that's going to execute this stuff so that we're not doing this in the context of the actual controller here. So I'm going to run Rails G job, and then I'm just going to call it send message, and we'll have a look at this. So if we go into our jobs directory now and look at send message job, so we have this perform method, and that's about it. So we want our perform method to just take a message, and then in here, I'm going to copy all of this for now and just paste that, and then this will become message and message, and render will become application controller dot render. And let's see what this does. Okay, so to do that, we need to go back over here and we need to say send message.job.perform later, which is what kicks it over into the background. and then we'll pass in our message. Okay, so I think we need to go back and start our server again. Okay, now let's try this. Let's go ahead and open up our console here, and let's type in a message. Okay, cool. So now you can see that that got sent out. And you can see here we basically just have the HTML, so on and so forth. So that's really great. Now what we need to do is append this HTML to the page. Okay, so how can we go about doing that? Let's go back over here to our roomchannel.js. Actually, I'm going to close all this stuff. I keep too many files open. So we'll go roomchannel.js, and then I'm going to open up our rooms index. So what we want to do is look in here in our messages. We have our, I'm going to put a div ID equals messages, right? And then I'm going to put those there. Let's just refresh over here and see what it looks like. Okay, it's fine. Okay, so now what I want to do is actually append that HTML to my messages. So I'm going to say we can do const message container equals document.get element by ID messages. So what I want to do here is say message container dot inner HTML equals, and then we're going to copy this and say plus data.html. Let's check our what's getting sent back there. So we need to look at the messages. We need to look at jobs, send message. Yeah, so I think we need to call .html on that. So let's refresh this and see what happens when we run this. So I'm just going to type in yo and hit enter. And let's check our console because we probably did something wrong. Cannot read property inner HTML of null, which means let's see here. You know what I did? I did this sort of backwards. I need to say messages outside of that. Not sort of backwards, I did it totally backwards, and I did it for an individual message, not one message. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, sweet. So now we're actually adding our messages to the page. However, there's an obvious problem here which we need to sort out, which is that it's not recognizing that this is actually me. And that's because our session, so once we kick this over into the background job, it is no longer aware of a quote-unquote current user because there's no session at that level. So we've got to kind of work out some other way to handle that. So what I have in mind is actually changing this up a little bit. So instead of just sending HTML, what I'm going to do is send one that says mine. I'm going to send another one that says theirs. And then I'm going to do something down here and say mine, mine, theirs, theirs. And then I'm going to send along the original message object. Okay? And in here, instead of saying message, I'm going to say mine. And I'm going to say theirs, and now we have to create these. Now this is going to create some duplicated code, and I'm not actually sure if this is the right or best way to handle this, but it's a way to handle it for now that gets us in a space where this is working. So I'm going to create a file called mine. I'm going to create another file called theirs, and I'm going to copy this code exactly. So in mine, it's going to just say me, because it is indeed me. In theirs, I'm just going to remove all of that so that it shows up in the right spot. Okay, so we have mine, we have theirs. In our send message job, we're sending both the partial for mine and theirs and the original message. And so essentially what we're doing is we're saying, okay, because we don't have access to the session here, we can't figure out who this message is from necessarily, or who it belongs to rather. I mean, we know the user ID on the message, but we don't know which connection we're sending this to, or at least we might, but I don't know how to do that. So this is how I'm doing it right now. So then what I'm going to do, because in my browser, by the time I get back to the console, I actually just added this div ID user ID up here, so you'll need to add this. But basically all this is doing is it's saying put a user ID on the page so that it's embedded on the page so that we can access it later. And then what I'm doing here is I'm calling basically just get the element by ID and then grab that attribute. And we actually need to convert this to a number. I did a little bit of work off camera to try to figure out what the heck was going on with this. So these are the only 3 lines of code that you missed, I think, is those 2 and the one up here at the very top. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say let HTML, and that's just going to be an empty variable for now. And then we're going to say if user ID is identical to data.message.user_ID, because remember we're sending the original message object right here, and that has a user ID. So if those things are equal, HTML equals data.mine, else HTML equals data.theirs. So I know this is a bit of a strange way to do this. Then the last thing we need to do is instead of data.html, do just HTML. So let's try this thing. Is my server running? Okay, so I'm going to refresh a couple of browser windows. So here I have an incognito. I'm flying Lion 495, and over here I have flying Highway 503. So let's try to chat between these guys. So we'll say, hey there. And so you can see now it's saying, okay, this is mine, and over here this is theirs. And then we can say, what's up? Sweet. So now we have a functioning chat. So the last thing I want to do, I'm just going to move this over, and let's go to the code. So the only thing we don't have like hooked up that you might consider essential is if we switch to room 3, it doesn't actually work because it's hard-coded which room we're in. So what I need to do is a very similar thing on my index up here. So I need to say, I'm going to say room ID is data. Well, the room ID is the ID of the div, and then I'm going to say data room ID is at room.id. Now remember, if I'm on the root path, I won't have a room, so I'm just going to do .try, and this is going to be nil if there's no room. Okay, so what this is going to allow us to do is back over in our room channel. So the first thing we need to do is actually not execute this until the page loads, because we can't pull stuff out of the HTML until it's loaded. So we're going to say document.addEventListener, and then we're going to say turbolinks load, and then just an anonymous function here, and then let's kick all of this back up into there. And finally, I'm going to, so turbolinks is loaded at this point. I'm going to copy this stuff here, and I will actually probably call this just user element instead of element. user element. And then up here, I'm going to call this room element. And then I'm going to say const room ID equals number data room ID. And that needs to be room element. Let me just do a quick find for elements to make sure I didn't miss any of those variable names. I think I'm good. So then, all we need to do is say room ID. So now we have that as a variable, and I'm going to say connected to room ID in my console here, just to be sure. So let's refresh this and make sure that we're getting something going on. Nope, unexpected token. Missed a comma somewhere. Yeah, looks like right there I'm missing a comma. Right. Seems to be the case. Let's refresh and let's see what we got. Okay, so now it says connected to 0, so I have another problem. So let's inspect the page. Room ID is 3. So I do have my room ID on there, so why is it, I'm going to take away this number thing. Room element, room ID, connected to null. Oh, I did not change that. Okay, so now I'm connected to 3. Down here, that's weird though, because I should have still gotten a user ID. Let's just try this though. So let's try this. So we're on room 3 now. So hello. Okay, and then we've got this. So let's go over to room 3. We have hello. So that's working. If I go to room 1, I shouldn't get any kind of message here. But I am. Why am I? So if you look at what's happening here, let me refresh. So it says I'm connected to 1, connected to 2, connected to 3. It's not going to reconnect me, but I'm connected to all 3 channels now, or rooms rather. So what's actually going on here is, since TurboLinks isn't really refreshing the page, I think we actually need to disconnect from the channels or rooms that we don't want to be in. So I think I've figured this out, and instead of just kind of coding all this out again from scratch because it was a little bit tricky, I'm just going to show you what I did and then talk you through it. So first of all, I Googled around for API documentation for this action cable JavaScript library for a while and didn't find anything. Now, I might just be being stupid at the moment, so if anybody has it, send me a link down in the comments. But otherwise, I want to show you how I sort of deduced this and talk about the downfalls of it a little bit. So what we're doing here is we're creating a subscription every time we land on a channel or a room. And the problem is that the page doesn't reload, and so we're always keeping each connection that we create. So once we leave a room, we actually need to disconnect. And there's definitely a more fine-grained way to do this, but what I'm essentially doing in this code right here is looping through all of the subscriptions and just removing all of them. Now, the drawback of this is that if you had other connections that weren't related to rooms, you're now disconnecting people from everything. So this is a very sort of shotgun approach. Just eliminate all the connections and then create a new connection. But let's take a look at how I sort of started figuring this out. So I'm console logging the subscriptions, and you can see here that this inside of it has more, it has a subscriptions method on it, which right now we have a single subscription. And I basically just kind of dug around in the actual JavaScript console looking at these methods, and it looks like you have this find all, and you could probably just read the code in here somewhere, right? Eventually. Constructor, I don't know. We can mess with that later. I don't want to get super in the weeds, but basically, I think what you would probably want to do is either find all or something like that based on some sort of query parameter, or I don't know. You could do a really complicated approach to this that would probably be a lot more efficient at what you're actually trying to achieve. But there's a remove, and it takes a single argument of subscription, and so I just kind of thought, well, hey, what if I just pass the actual subscriptions, like all of the subscriptions, to remove, and that seemed to work. I hope that's not too confusing. Honestly, it confused the crap out of me, so for at least a few minutes, so that is what it is. Let's try this here so we can all see it working in both windows. So I'm going to refresh everything. So this is coming to be the full functionality that we wanted. So let's go to room 2. Actually, let's make a new room. And this is where we don't have sockets for the rooms yet. So we could do that in the future. But let's everybody go to room 4 and let's chat. So we have, hey, from the left. And that didn't work right here. Why did that not show up? From the right. Okay, so that's working. Try this again. Okay, so it's working. I guess I just had not refreshed something, and it had some, I had loaded this up with some bad JavaScript in it while I was testing, so maybe it just had that loaded still. So now let's go to room 2 or 1 and say from room 1. And so now it doesn't show up here, but if I go here to room 1, hi, you know, now it's working. So we really have a fully functional chat room at this point. So what I want to do is just spend a little more time and kind of clean up the user interface a little bit. And I'm going to post the code on GitHub. So if you don't really want to follow along with this, that might be fine. If you do, cool, just stick around. But that's what I'm going to do now, is just kind of make this look a little bit more real. Okay, so what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to get rid of this hello thing here in this navbar. I'm going to just cut this. And I'm going to just have the name of the room there. Then what I'm going to do is go up to the above my form in this column 3, and the first thing I'm going to do is put a h1, and I'm just going to call it well, no, I don't want a h1. I just want to say logged in as current user.name. Let's see what that looks like. I mean, basically I want to find a good way to display that. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do here, again, I'm going to go to my go-to element, card body, and actually gonna say logged, I'm gonna say small, logged in as break, and then I'm gonna do a bold tag and get the current user username. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's a little bit better. So what I'm actually gonna do is, I guess I could do another nav right there, right? I mean, why not? So we could do navbar. It doesn't have to be. Just trying to think about how to make this look uniform-ish. So instead of card, I could do div navbar light. Let's see what that does. Okay, that freaked it out. But I don't hate it, actually. That's interesting. Then I'm going to add a span here. Well, let's see, div. Let's call it div the Navbar brand and see what that does. Okay, so not quite right. You know what? Let's just back this out to my card like that for now. We'll keep it, and I'm going to fix the. I'm actually going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to say no outline. Okay, and then in application.scss down here, I'm going to do .card.no outline is border none. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, not bad, not bad. So now what? What I'd like to do is add the no outline class to all of those rooms. So down here, we're going to say no outline. See what that looks like. Okay, so that's cool. What I'd like to do though is say under this, let's make that bold, and let's make this small, and say I want to say the number of members. So what I'd like to do is say room.users.count, and then say members. So room needs to have many members, has many users through messages. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's no good. So you can see here that this thing is messed up because it's counting the messages. So what we actually want to do is say room.users.unique. So now that makes sense, right? So you can see how many people are basically in the chat. I'd like for this to be, let's say room over here. And then in, I don't need that open anymore. I do need my, okay, so dot room. Maybe I should call that room card to be a little more specific. Room card. Let's see, so we want to basically say, I need to basically give this a class of name, and then we're going to put the name in there, and I don't want the BR tag in the span. And then over here, I'm going to give this a span with a class of member count, and then I'm going to get all of this, put that there. Okay, so now I can do roomcard.name, font weight bold, so I can actually get rid of the bold tag, color black, and let's do the member count, and we'll do color maybe like 777, and font weight light. Okay, so now what's that gonna do? Well, I don't need these bold tags anymore. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Cool. And so I also don't want this text decoration here. Room card. So the whole tag is inside of a link, right? The whole card. So I'm going to say text decoration none. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to throw an important on there. Actually, I'm going to bump it in there on name and see if that does it. No. So I'm just going to make that important, and we're going to see what happens. I can make things look pretty good, but I don't always use the best CSS practices, or know even. I'm more of a back-end person, but I do like to make this kind of stuff. I don't know why that's not working. Let's make it hovered. I don't know, let's see, no. What I really want to do, oh, it's because I need to actually get the A tag above it. Okay, I'm being dumb. Let me go back. So instead of this, I'm going to create a thing just above it. It's going to be .room link. And then we'll just move that up there, and let's try it without the important because I don't really like doing that. Okay, and then let's add a class link to room, class room link. Now let's see what happens. Nothing. You know what, maybe I need to do like and hover. Let me try that. That would be fairly sensible. Okay, that's better. So then I want to do background color, a bunch of E's, and then I'm going to do the border radius is 20 pixels. Let's see how this looks. Okay, I'm going to bump these guys down to the room card. I don't think I should be putting those on the A tag. I actually only want that on hover. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do here is say transition background color 0.5s ease. That should make that have a pretty smooth little hover. Okay, cool. And I need to make the border radius on the room card so that it doesn't flash with those little angles. That's pretty nice. Okay, cool, cool. So we're getting there. What I'm gonna do as well is make it so that the active room is a little bit more obvious somehow. So let's see if we can do something cool with that. So what do we want to do? So we'll say and.active background color. Let's do something kind of stark to begin. So background color black, color white. I might need to do .name, and then we'll do .member count, color maybe E0s. Okay, and then what I want to do is say, what is active in this case? That would be the room card. So here I need to say active class equals, and then we'll do like a ternary thing. So we'll say at room equals room question mark, and then we'll say active, or then just nothing. And then on the room card we'll say active class. So let's see what this does. So we should have like a black one. That's pretty cool. I don't need to print out active. Oh, I printed that out. There we go. We don't need that. I like that. That's pretty cool. Okay, so now let's fix this. Add a new. Let's fix the form because that looks like junk. So how can we make that look? All right, so what I'm gonna do for that, first of all, I need to open that, so that would be wrong window. So that would be messages form, no, rooms form. Okay, so first of all, let's just change this to be form group, and then remove this from anything like that because I don't need anything there. And let's make this MB3. Let me see where we're at. Okay, I'm going to make that a BTN info to just give us a little bit of a change up as far as the colors go. No, I'm not. I don't like that. BTN outline primary. Is that how that's supposed to be written? That's better. That's cool. Nice. Let's do, we don't need a placeholder probably. What I do need is something telling us that we're creating a new room. So I'm just going to make a P bold create a new room. And with that, you know what, actually I'm going to make this just say create new room, create new room. And then here we'll say placeholder room name, and then we're just going to say add, and that's going to be add a new room. I'm going to get rid of this text, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, I don't hate that. Let's do, you know what I actually want to do here? I want to put this in a card now. Render form. So we'll do div card body. And I think I'm gonna like this actually. I don't hate it, but it's like very tiny. Let's just do maybe HR tags above and below. I hit the wrong button. So HR, let's see what this does. Okay, that looks pretty good. Add a new room, room name. So definitely have a sort of monochromatic style one on here. Let's see, what else can we do to make this look good? What is this column called? So I have a column here. So let's just call this rooms, and then rooms sidebar, maybe. So what I'm going to do here is just border right 1 pixel solid, and definitely taking some inspiration here from Facebook Messenger. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think that looks pretty cool actually. So this over here looks kind of jankety. First of all, this is really jankety with the it's scrolling past the thing and you can't see, or there's this sort of layered thing. I want to get rid of this scroll bar, so that's happening because I have a mouse plugged in, but I just don't want to see the scroll bar. Maybe only if I'm scrolling or something, like this sort of native Mac behavior. All right, so I'm gonna start by just eliminating my scroll bars. And I'm just gonna paste in some code from the web, and this should just axe the scroll bar. Okay, and now we can see over here on the right, we do not have a scroll bar anymore. It also doesn't scroll super well. There it goes. Okay, so it looks better. It's less overlap. We need to go down to our chat box, and we're going to say background color white, border top 1 pix solid E. See what this looks like. So what I want to do actually with that thing, because that does look better obviously, but I want that to go all the way across. So let's see how we can make that happen. So we actually want to margin left minus 15 pixels. Now let's see how wide it is. Now it's not wide enough, and that's because we are subtracting 15 pixels off of it right there. So now we're in business. Okay, so let's go ahead and change that up. So we're just going to make this 100%, and then we're going to margin left minus 15%. Let's see what that, not percent, pixels, excuse me. And it looks like that should do the trick for us. Okay, so what we also need to do is on the bottom of, so actually what we would like is the chat room. So the chat room, does the chat room contain the chat box? That is the question. So div ID messages exist outside of the chat box. So we don't want that to go all the way down. So if we do height calc 100% minus 100 pixels, what does that get us? Does that do anything? Yeah, the box is there. So actually, you know what I'm noticing is I can use this messages in this manner. So let's get the heights to be right, or close anyway. Let's do like, where are we? So let's bring it on down, come on down. Is that gonna put me right at the thing? That's pretty weird. Huh. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Let me actually try to, so chat room, messages, and then in here, I did that again. I don't think I've ever done that before. Okay, so let's try that with the messages and see what that does. That's odd. So now that's the whole page scrolling now. I guess it's because it doesn't have a height maybe. Let's try putting a height on here. Okay, so now the whole page does scroll, but you can also see, if you get in here just right, you can see that scrolling. So you kind of have to be on top of an element, which is kind of weird. So I'm going to actually kill the overflow Y on the whole page, hidden. Let's see what that does. So now if I'm over here, okay, so it all works the way you would expect now. So that just kind of scrolls inside there, but you can see we have a problem there at the bottom. So that was supposed to be glued to the bottom. Why is it not at the bottom of the page? Weird. Why don't I just set that to minus 10 pixels? Okay, where can I do that at? Down here in the chat box, minus 10 pixels. Normally I would try to worry about why that's happening, but right now I'm really not concerned. I just want to kind of wrap this up. So now what we need to do is figure out how to get that height to not be so tall. Actually, that's not right. What I need to do is give myself padding at the bottom of like 100 pixels. Maybe padding bottom of 100 pixels. And let's see what that does. Nothing. Okay, so I played around with this for a minute, and it looks like I need to set the padding bottom on messages here to 200 pixels or something like that, so that we can actually scroll up to see the latest message, because everything else was getting cut off down there. So I'm going to add that on my messages object, my messages ID here. So I'll say padding bottom 200 pixels. So now I can scroll all the way to the bottom. What would be great is if it started out already scrolled. So I need to investigate how to do that. I think I'm going to have to make another video to kind of work a little bit more on some interactions here, because this is getting really long and I just want to do one last little bit of cleanup. So yeah, let's do that really quick. Let's just wrap up the styling and just call it a day. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is deal with this navbar thing up here. So I want to say, where are we? So I've got my chat room navbar. I'm going to get rid of this BG light. And in actual fact, we need to get rid of this MB4 thing. So now we can see that that looks like it's just scrolling there, but what I want to do is, first of all, so where are we? Chat room, and then we have navbar, so on. So I'm going to say right here, we'll just do .navbar, and we'll do border bottom 1 pix solid in the same thing we've been doing. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we can see everything just scrolling straight under that way, which is nice. We have a little bit of a gap here, and I'm going to fix that, and I suspect it's going to be the same kind of deal, minus 15 pixels, and let's see how wide it actually is. I think this is just because this is in a div that has padding, basically. So I'm going to do width calc 100% plus 15 pixels. Let's see what that does. Not what we wanted. Maybe I need to go a little bit more. Is that even doing anything? Oh no, it's not doing anything because I didn't click on the right spot. Okay, so yeah, it's going out. So I can do 30. You can see that at the very bottom of the screen, if I go past 30, that thing jumps on the screen. So I'm just going to do 30 because it's exactly right. So plus 30 pixels, and now this is starting to look like a real chat application to some extent. Let's go ahead and do one thing here. I want to break this out. We're going to make this in bold. Okay. And then last, I'm just going to do a small, I'm going to do another BR. Whoa. Let's see what this does. I need to make that at room. That may not look good, or it may take up too much space. It may mess up our work there. No, I think it's fine, kind of. I'm going to break it out of that, actually, and get rid of the BR tag and put that in parentheses. Well, let's just do it like that. 3 minutes. Weird. Okay. I can dig that, I think. I think that looks cool. So yeah, that's about it for this one, actually. So I'm gonna kind of study on the interactions here and the user interface. I think this is a slick looking little thing. I mean, obviously it takes a lot from the Messenger design. We can make it even better. I may mess around with it a little bit more on my own, and whatever I end up doing, I will put on the GitHub link, which you will find in the description. So if it looks a little bit different, don't worry about it. You can just kind of take a look around and see what's going on. But that's about it for this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found this helpful, and I will talk to you next time.